Let me ask you something. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you lost yourself trying to keep them? You tried explaining, proving, chasing, fixing, but no matter what you did, it was never enough. Then one day you just stopped. You didn't announce it. You didn't make a scene. You simply pulled your energy back. And that's when everything changed. That's when she started noticing. That's when the same person who made you feel invisible suddenly began to crave your attention again. That's the moment this video is about. The moment you finally detach and she starts chasing. But not because of games, not because of manipulation, but because your silence carries a truth that her ego can't ignore. This video isn't about getting even. It's about understanding the power you've always had, the power of emotional control, of peace, of walking away without anger. If you've ever wondered why the person who once ignored your calls starts calling when you stop caring, if you've ever questioned why your distance suddenly makes you desirable, stay until the end, because I'm going to break down the psychology behind detachment that no one talks about. The kind of detachment that heals you, transforms you, and reclaims your self-respect. By the end of this, you'll understand why silence attracts more than words, why walking away speaks louder than begging someone to stay, and why the moment you let go is the exact moment they finally see your worth. So don't skip a second, because what you're about to hear will change the way you love, the way you respond, and the way you see yourself forever. When you detach, something extraordinary happens. Your energy transforms. It stops radiating from a place of need and begins to flow from a place of peace. People feel that difference, especially the one who thought they could always have you whenever they wanted. You see, detachment is not about running away or building walls. It's about reclaiming your power. It's when you finally stop chasing someone to fill the emptiness inside you and start realizing that you were never empty to begin with. That shift, that silent, invisible shift in your energy, is what draws them back. It's what makes her suddenly start to chase what she once took for granted. When you were chasing her, your energy screamed desperation. You were giving, 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 and in return, you received breadcrumbs of attention. You convinced yourself that your love, your patience, your consistency would eventually make her stay. But what you didn't realize was that energy never lies. A person can feel when your presence is a form of seeking rather than being. The more you chased, the more she felt she could pull away. Because subconsciously, people are drawn to what's not easily available. They are intrigued by what they can't fully possess. And the truth is, the moment you detach, you stop being predictable. You become a mystery again. Detachment shifts the dynamic entirely. It's the point where your energy no longer says, I need you to choose me. It now says, I've already chosen myself. That difference is profound, because when you detach, you stop leaking energy trying to fix someone else, and you start investing that energy into yourself. Your focus changes from her moods, her replies, her actions, to your purpose, your peace, your growth. You begin to glow differently. You speak less but mean more. You move slower but with intention. You stop reacting and start responding. And this quiet power is what makes people feel your absence in the loudest way. When you detach, you break the invisible energetic cord that kept you tied to someone's approval. You stop being emotionally available for confusion. You start creating emotional boundaries, not because you hate her, but because you've learned to love yourself enough to stop begging for love. That energy of self-worth is intoxicating. It's what turns the tables. She starts to feel the loss of something she didn't even know she valued. Your calm presence, your devotion, your emotional safety. She begins to sense that the energy that once chased her has disappeared, and suddenly, she feels the void you left behind. And that's when she starts chasing. Not necessarily for you, but for the feeling you once gave her. The feeling of being desired, understood, and admired. But now, it's different, Because detachment doesn't mean you're playing hard to get. It means you've finally understood that love without respect is slavery. That chasing validation is emotional poverty. You start to understand that the most attractive energy in the world is peace. When a man is calm, grounded, and unattached to outcomes, he becomes magnetic because peace is rare, clarity is rare, emotional maturity is rare. So when you detach, you rise, not above her, but above the old version of yourself that kept settling for less. You stop negotiating your value. You stop begging to be seen. You stop proving your worth to someone who wasn't even trying to understand it. And that inner stillness, that quiet confidence, becomes your greatest power. You realize you don't need her attention to feel alive. You don't need her validation to feel worthy. You don't need her presence to feel whole. You are already complete. And that realization is where everything changes. She starts to chase not because you've manipulated her, but because your energy finally feels authentic, powerful, and free. You are no longer trying to be loved. You are embodying love. You are no longer waiting for peace. You are living in it. That is the real transformation. That is the energy that shifts everything. So, if you want her to chase, stop trying to be chosen. Become the kind of person who chooses peace over drama, clarity over confusion, and self-respect over temporary affection. Because the moment you do that, your energy starts speaking a new language, one that says, I don't chase anymore. I attract what aligns with me. And that, right there, is when she feels it. The loss, the regret, the realization. Detach not to make her chase, but to return to yourself. Because when you do, the right people won't need to be chased. They'll recognize your peace, and they'll move mountains to be near it. When you finally walk away, something shifts in her perception that words can't fully describe. It's like a mirror being turned toward her for the first time, reflecting everything she refused to see when you were there. Your effort, your loyalty, your presence. When you detach, she begins to experience a silence that speaks louder than your words ever did. And it's in that silence that realization begins to sink in. She starts to notice the void, not just the absence of your messages or your voice, but the absence of being truly understood. Because deep down, she knows no one else paid attention the way you did. While you were there, she underestimated the consistency of your love. She thought your presence was permanent, your patience unending. She thought your forgiveness was infinite. You see, people don't see value when something is always available. Familiarity blinds them to the blessing standing in front of them. The more present you were, the more she assumed you'd never leave. But when your energy retreats, when your attention is no longer hers to depend on, suddenly, she feels the gravity of what she lost. It's a strange paradox of human nature. We crave what we can't have, and we neglect what we think we'll never lose. When you detach, you become that paradox. You become the thing she once had, but now can't reach. Every moment she took for granted begins to replay in her mind, not as comfort, but as regret. Every ignored text, every delayed response, every silent treatment. It all comes back, but this time she's the one on the receiving end of silence. She starts to realize that you weren't asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong person. You weren't needy. You were invested. You weren't weak. You were loyal. And now that you've walked away, she's left facing the emptiness that she once made you feel. That's the ironic beauty of detachment. It reverses the emotional equation. The chaser becomes the one being chased, and the one who was once ignored becomes the one that cannot be forgotten. This realization doesn't happen overnight. At first, she might feel relieved. She might even convince herself she's moved on. But with time, when the silence stretches longer and longer, and she sees you rebuilding your peace, her confidence begins to crumble. She starts checking your social media, not to see what you post, but to feel something familiar, your energy. She'll scroll through old messages just to remember how it felt to be seen. And she'll realize that what she thought was replaceable wasn't. Because people like you, who love deeply, stay patient, forgive easily, and give endlessly, are not common. When you detach, you teach her something no conversation ever could, that presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. You teach her that emotional availability has limits, that love has boundaries, and that your peace will always come before her games. You stop being a convenience and become a consequence. She starts to understand that your absence is not emptiness, it's self-respect. And that's when the regret turns into longing. The most powerful form of communication between two people is not words, it's energy. When your energy withdraws, she feels it on a level deeper than logic, because for the first time, she realizes that your presence was not just physical, it was spiritual. You were her calm, her validation, her emotional safety net. And now, without you, the world feels louder, colder, emptier. The very peace she once found annoying, your quietness, your stability, your consistency, becomes the thing she craves the most. And here's the truth most people never admit: love doesn't always fade. Sometimes it just changes direction. When you detach, your love stops flowing toward her and begins to flow back to you. And that self-love, that peace, that renewed focus, it glows. And people feel that glow. They sense it. They're drawn to it. That's why she starts chasing. Not because she suddenly became a better person, but because she finally felt the loss of your light. So if you're in that space right now, where you're pulling back, where you're choosing silence over chaos, stay there. Don't break your detachment to remind her of your worth. She already knows, and the longer you remain in peace, the louder her realization will become. Let her see what life without your energy really feels like. Let her face the truth that she mistook consistency for weakness and silence for indifference. Because when you detach, she doesn't just lose you, she loses the version of herself that existed when she had you. That's the real loss. That's what keeps her awake at night. So remember this: you never lose someone when you detach. They lose access to the best parts of you. And sometimes that's the only lesson they ever truly learn. Detachment is so misunderstood. People often confuse it with indifference, with arrogance, or emotional coldness. But real detachment is none of those things. It's not about ignoring someone you love. It's about no longer abandoning yourself to love them. It's about understanding that your peace cannot depend on how someone else feels about you. When you truly detach, you're not playing a game. You're reclaiming your balance. You stop moving through relationships like a beggar, waiting for scraps of affection, and you start walking like a whole person who knows their worth. So many people chase love because they think closeness means control, that if they hold on tighter, they'll feel safer. But that's not love, that's fear. And fear-based attachment always leads to suffering. When you're afraid of losing someone, you stop being authentic. You start shrinking yourself to fit their moods, silencing your needs, and pretending that disrespect doesn't hurt. You think keeping them close is worth losing yourself. That's why detachment feels painful at first, because it's the moment you stop lying to yourself. It's when you look in the mirror and finally admit that loving someone should never come at the cost of your self-respect. True detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care without clinging. It's a quiet strength, not a loud exit. It's when you can look at someone, love them deeply, but still say, "I choose peace if you can't meet me halfway." It's self-respect in motion. Because at some point, you realize that your love doesn't heal people who refuse to face themselves. Your patience won't change someone who's not ready to grow. And your availability won't be valued by someone who hasn't learned to value presence. You detach because you've understood the law of emotional energy. The more you chase, the less you're seen. The more you explain, the less you're heard. And the more you try to prove your worth, the less they believe it. It's not manipulation, it's psychology. People are wired to value what's scarce and question what's too easy. When you detach, you remind them that your energy is not unlimited. That love from you is not an entitlement, it's a privilege. But let's be honest, detachment takes maturity. Because your ego will want to react. It will want to prove that you're right, that you're the one who cared more. It will want to text back, to explain, to chase closure. But real detachment is emotional discipline. It's silence when chaos demands reaction. It's walking away when everything inside you wants to stay and fight for something that's already lost its balance. And that's what makes it powerful. Because detachment is not avoidance, it's alignment. You're not running from them, you're returning to yourself. When you reach that level of emotional control, something remarkable happens. The people who took you for granted start to feel your absence in ways they can't explain. Your silence begins to echo in their mind. They start to notice that you're no longer emotionally available for their confusion. They realize they can't access your calm anymore, can't rely on your attention, can't pull energy from your empathy. That's when they start to chase. Because deep down, they know they lost someone who loved with depth, and they mistook that love for weakness. And here's what's even more profound. Detachment heals you from within. The same heart that once hurt starts to feel peace. You stop overthinking. You stop waiting. You stop trying to read between lines that were never meant for you. Instead, you invest that energy into becoming grounded, focused, and whole again. You start reading books, pursuing goals, finding purpose. You build a life that feels full without their presence. And when that happens, your energy speaks for itself. You no longer chase people. You attract experiences that match your peace. So when I say detachment is self-respect, I mean it literally. It's the moment you draw a line between love and self-sacrifice. It's when you stop rescuing people who enjoy drowning. It's when you realize that love doesn't have to hurt and peace doesn't have to be earned. You stop trying to prove you're worthy of love, and instead you start living like you already are. That's the power of detachment. It's not revenge. It's not punishment. It's alignment with truth. The truth that you were never meant to lose yourself in someone else's confusion. You were meant to rise in your own clarity. And once you find that peace, you never trade it again. So remember this: detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's when your heart is still open, but your boundaries are firm. It's when you love deeply, but never at the expense of your dignity. And when you reach that point, you stop chasing anything, because everything meant for you naturally starts to find its way back. Silence is a language most people are too afraid to speak. But when you master it, it becomes your greatest power. In relationships, silence exposes what words often hide. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop reacting, when you stop trying to be understood by someone who only listens to respond, your silence becomes the loudest truth in the room. It says, I am no longer available for confusion. It says, I don't need to prove my worth anymore. It says, I've outgrown this noise. You see, we live in a world obsessed with words. We think closure comes from conversations, from long explanations, from endless back and forth that lead nowhere. But the real closure doesn't come when they finally understand you. It comes when you finally stop needing them to. That's what silence does. It detaches you from the illusion that you can make someone respect or value you through reasoning. Silence is the moment you let go of control, and that's when everything starts to shift. When you go silent, she feels it, because silence is not absence. It's presence that no longer needs to speak. It's the kind of presence that forces reflection. She starts to wonder why you stopped reacting, why you no longer text first, why you no longer care to prove your side. And that confusion is powerful, because for the first time, the control she once had over your emotions starts slipping away. The silence you hold starts echoing inside her head. It triggers self-awareness in ways your words never could. When you used to argue, she knew your patterns. She knew how to pull your emotions, how to keep you engaged. But silence breaks the pattern. It tells her, without saying a word, that you've reached emotional clarity, that you've realized your energy is too expensive to waste on someone who only values it when it's gone. Silence is not passive. It's deeply active. It's discipline in motion. It's you teaching someone through peace what they refuse to learn through chaos. But make no mistake, silence isn't easy. It requires strength. It requires sitting with emotions you once used to project. It requires resisting the urge to reach out, to fix, to explain, to beg. That's why most people can't handle it. They break their silence too soon because they mistake reaction for connection. But true power lies in stillness, because the moment you stop reacting, you stop giving them control over your emotions. You start owning your peace again. And the beauty of silence is that it reveals truth. When you go silent, you see who reaches out and who doesn't. You see who values your presence and who only valued your attention. Silence separates genuine connection from dependency. It filters out the noise and shows you what's real. Because when someone truly cares, your silence doesn't offend them. It awakens them. But when someone was only there for validation, your silence exposes their disinterest. Either way, you win. Because clarity is peace. And yes, she might start to chase. Because your silence becomes a mirror she can't escape. It reflects her behavior, her choices, her mistakes. It shows her what life feels like without your emotional energy. That's when she begins to understand the depth of your presence. That's when she realizes the power of what she lost. Your silence becomes the loudest reminder that love is not about chasing, arguing, or convincing. It's about alignment. And when you're aligned, you no longer speak to be heard. You move in silence, and your energy does the talking. This kind of silence is not emotional withdrawal, it's emotional wisdom. It's you recognizing that not every reaction deserves your energy, and not every situation needs your voice. Sometimes your absence teaches what your words never could. Sometimes walking away peacefully has more impact than staying to prove a point. Because when you no longer participate in emotional chaos, you force others to confront their own noise. That's why silence terrifies people. It holds them accountable. It shows them what their actions created. And once you've reached that level of peace, no manipulation can touch you. You become untouchable because nothing outside of you has the power to disturb your inner world anymore. That's when she realizes you've changed. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring correctly. You're no longer chasing connection, you're protecting your energy. So if you've reached that stage where you've said all you could, done all you could, and nothing changed, stop talking. Let your silence do the work. Let your peace be the message. Let your stillness become the mirror. Because silence is not empty, it's full of answers. It's full of power. It's full of truth. And once you learn to trust it, you'll never need to prove your worth again. Remember, this silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the space where self-respect speaks louder than emotion. When you stay silent long enough, people don't just hear your absence, they feel it. And that feeling is what makes them chase what they once took for granted.